All right, we are live, folks. Welcome to the Tavern Chat podcast. This is a fireside chat in support of ZineQuest. I think I've gotten that right now 2 shows in a row. I've been calling it
That sounds
Zine.
about right.
Yeah, I'm a New Yorker, so I kind of zine, potato, potato. I screw it all up. With me is Joel Hines. He is the creator of Desert Moon of Karth. Joel, welcome.
Yeah. Thank you. It's good to be here.
Oh, I thank you. You're taking time out of a weekend to not to speak with me, but speak with the audience and about your project. But as we were sitting down before the show, and folks, the not so secret is we all when we do these, we spend a couple of minutes just chewing the shit and getting to get to know each other and relax. But Joel, how did you find gaming? We touched on it, but how did you come into the gaming hobby?
Sure. So this was, I guess, elementary school. I tacked on a couple extra years we were discussing, but I just I must have seen something in like a magazine or heard about it. I'm sure, but the memories from exactly when, like the genesis is a little fuzzy, but I know I had there's a friend who I bumped into in elementary school, and she said, so her family, they played Dungeons and Dragons, right? And boy, right. When I heard that, because, I had all of the books, right, for 3.5, that was sort of my endpoint, because I'd read all the books, I'd be really excited about, all these dragon lairs and these class builds. I was real into, like, the numbers back then, And, like, I got this one book about how to build, like, a fortress, the Stronghold Builder's Guide from way back when, and I had all the gold bricks calculated out or whatever. But anyway, so I went. Yeah, it was too much. Wouldn't do that today for sure. I've still got little papers with scrawls. I think it really helped my math back then for sure.
I think it helped all of our math back in the school days. That and our vocabulary.
Definitely, really picked like Vorpool for sure. And so I went in and went over to their apartment, and they had a regular game going, and I think it was second edition that they were playing, which for me, right, I've been reading all these 3.5 books, so I come in and they're doing something way different, right? It's sort of more old school, little, like the rules are lighter, and I thought it was really cool, but it felt like a sort of a real sort of like strange like magic experience, right? Because they're going in and bestowing upon these like ancient rules for me at the time, and saying, all right, so we're going to go and hunt the dragon. And we had some plan, like we were going to set up some booby traps. And I threatened some guy with a dagger. I was a wizard with like 3 hit points. And that was a heap of fun. And I didn't really run into gaming that was that enjoyable in a sense, because I did a couple one-shots where it was like 11 in the game shop until I guess college I got into it again. And that was a lot of fun. And more so post-college, near the tail end.
Yeah, I think there's an evolution to it, and I know in my case, I was more interested in. I was, if it was D&D, I was the GM. Other game systems, others to step up, but people in my group were like, "Oh, we're gonna play D&D. It's got to be Eric," and I became more interested in campaign play as opposed to, when you're first playing, like you do a lot of one shots, might be with the same characters, but you're not worried about how your characters get from one location to another. Yeah. It's almost like watching a sitcom where we can run the episodes in any order and it doesn't matter. It might be the same characters, but there's no real connection. And as we got older, as same group of friends from high school through college, as we matured, and I think my game matured, it became more campaign based, where let's see where we can get the characters to. Are they going to make connections in the world? The world becomes more real, I think, when you do that. But
yeah, definitely.
So now that's how you got where you are now, I guess you could say. But you're not writing an adventure here for D&D.
No.
Right? You're writing it for Mothership.
Yeah.
So now how did you come across? I mean, some people never leave the comfort of D&D and its different editions. Some people spew all over the place and pick up everything. I was that way when I was younger, because I could learn a new system like that.
Just pick it up real fast.
And now as an adult, I can't learn many new systems anymore. They've got to kind of fit what I already know and just be an evolution upon it. But how did you find Mothership?
Sure. So it's sort of a, I guess almost like it started. So I wanted to get back into D&D sort of post college. I'd had a lot of fun, and it wasn't something that spent a lot of time in. So I started a campaign. I got all the 5e books, and that was great. And I ran a couple sort of Eberron 5e games because I thought that was a cool setting, and that was a good time. But I did run into a lot of the sort of prep work was a bit much. You know, the statistics on all of the monsters and making sure it's balanced, and then as you know, 5e sort of has a more of an epic power feel to it. And so I stumbled across when I was looking for sort of good intro, like one shot, like D&D adventures. I was on like DM's Guild, and they have some cool ones out there. Like I think Wild Sheep Chase was one of the sort of interesting, well-made ones for 5e. But then I came across some sort of more old school stuff, like for reference originally, and then I discovered there's this whole sort of OSR sphere. And when I came across that, something sort of clicked. Like they have that subreddit, and I just, you know, I'm sure you may have done this in the past. When you find something new that's interesting, you just sort of I dived really deeply into it. I read everything, all the like different blogs out there. I went and, you know, read a bunch of the books and the systems, and I went back and forth for a while on, you know, how to get into it. So looking at basic fantasy RPG because it was a cheap and sort of a good, pretty solid basic one. But then I decided to go for it. Yeah, you were gonna.
No, I was about to say. When you bring up basic fantasy RPG, that's Chris Gonnerman. You can grab that on Amazon. It's damn near at cost.
I did $5 for the
$5, and the supplements, the adventures, the material for it. I think I have everything that was out until about a year and a half ago. I have to check my. I guess I have to go back to the Basic Fantasy site and see what else is released.
But it's great value for, and it's, you know, it's a work of love, it seems like, and that seemed really solid to me. But then I finally decided to go with Dungeon Crawl Classics RPG because as my main one, and there was sort of trade-offs with both. I like the simplicity of the other, but as someone who'd come from like a 3.5 background, you like the crunch, you like the numbers. Yeah, a little of the crunch was all right, and the zaniness, the wacky sort of 70s flair of it definitely appealed to me. So that was my sort of first step into the game I ran, and I had fun. I ran a bunch of funnels, you know, and a Hot Springs Island campaign, and then I wanted some sci-fi after that, and so I got into Stars Without Number, which is wonderful. I'm running a game right now. I love it. It's tied. It's up there. It's one of my favorites.
Kevin Crawford did a great job with all the rules that he has out, and his fantasy rules are coming out. They were kickstarted.
Yeah, prior. I saw
that. He's got a great system, and again, when you're talking about doing it for the love, does Kevin make a profit off this? Yes, but he gives back so much. He does.
And he makes value.
He makes value, but even with his Kickstarters, like the art that you when you're supporting one of his Kickstarters, you're significantly, you know, it's top-notch art.
Yeah.
And when it funds, and after it's published, the art he releases to the public for the use in other commercial projects without fees, and that is giving back to the community, because it means small publishers like myself, who have all of like 3 products out before. And others starting out like you have these resources that you couldn't afford on your own. You wouldn't have the connections.
It's super useful, and all of his stuff is so valuable. The generators, the sandbox material in any of his games that he's got. And the other thing I've taken, which has been sort of an inspiration going forward, is I don't mind social media as much as some people, but I don't love it, right? And I like what he had to say about I don't know, Twitter being cancer you give yourself or something. And I don't have one of those. I've got too many social media forms already. And I'd love to find that balance, right, between sort of being out there as a person and just being, hidden behind the person who makes just someone who makes good products. And I think that's sort of a balance in, as you're moving forward in a RPG career.
I think Kevin has certainly found that. I mean, over the years,
he's a little more of a hermit than me, even in terms of
He's my blog's been around for like a dozen years. He's commented over the years on the blog, maybe a half dozen times. I couldn't even tell you when, but when he did, I was like, "Oh my God, it's Kevin Croy!"
Yeah, because it's like seeing a unicorn.
Yeah, and it always was to make not just a valid point, but to explain his point. And bring his own support, and it was always awesome. I see social media almost like a necessary evil.
Sure, yeah, definitely.
Kind of. Some of it less necessary than calling Twitter a self-inflicted cancer is damn near appropriate. It is.
It's definitely a bit hyperbolic, but I get where he's. I mean, I don't have one. Yeah.
I do, but I'll be honest with you. Anybody who follows me on Twitter, I'll share out my blog posts and my podcast, but I don't read it because there are people like the infamous Garrett Sharka with Far West that is going to be it's over 9 years later to Kickstarter, so that's one of those infamous yardsticks. But he can't work on a project, but he can tweet multiple times per day. So it's like it's a huge. Obviously, for some people, it's a huge distraction, and
it's all in how you use it, right? It's a tool.
It can be an addiction. I personally find that something like Facebook or MeWe is easier. Not to maintain your sanity and your temper, if you avoid the main feeds and just participate in the communities, ones that are generally well moderated, which say basically we're here to talk about gaming. We're not here to talk about real world drama because there's other more appropriate places. That means I can go there and I can read my gaming stuff and participate in conversations. And if I might get pissed off about whether THACO was a positive or a negative to the game when it was introduced, but I don't need real world issues coming into it. I deal with that in the real world anyway. I don't need it in my gaming. And I think that's part of the issues that people have with social media is that it amplifies a lot of the negatives. And I think there's just a way that you can focus it to focus on the positives. And usually that's well-moderated groups. I'm not talking about ones that are heavy-handed, just groups that have a theme. And if you go into Gamers Uncensored, you're going into a shit show. If you go into if you go into a group that says whatever, no politics, no real-world issues on the main page when you log in, then you know what you're going to get to. You shouldn't be surprised in those situations. And I think that's the way.
I think it's definitely I think the type of conversations could be important and could be valuable if had in a nuanced way. But I think with strangers on the internet, that it's definitely in a large scale type thing. It's not the place I want to have that type of discussion. I'd prefer a small community of people on any important topic. But the internet's got its pros and its cons, right? And I think it's incredibly valuable and also has its downsides.
Incredibly frustrating, and you gotta find your best path through it. And I find it, if you find a path that is, the weeds are removed and it's a defined path, that's great. If you want to hex crawl your way through the internet, expect
it's going to be an adventure.
It's going to be an adventure, and
there's some difficulties there.
You'll probably suffer a TPK along the way, but it's to be expected. I guess the internet's the one place you want to be on Rails. Huh. I never actually thought about it that way, but yeah.
Yeah, there's a blog post right there. The internet on Rails adventure.
Yeah, God, I'm just talking about social media. You want your social media on Rails, because when you go off the Rails, it is like it's like throwing first level characters into a sandbox built for 10. The power curve just unwieldy.
Definitely.
But all right, so you found the OSR. And DCC, of all things, my gaming group. Like when I looked at DCC with the beta, I looked at the beta and I was like, I hated it. There was something about the beta rules that were just they didn't resonate with me, and it felt really, really awkward. And then I took the plunge when the full rules came out, and I got it and I read them, and I had that same magical feeling I had when I first read my friend's first edition DMG. It spoke to me, and it was magical, and it was new, even though I'd been gaming for years. And although I will tell right up front, I've never I understand the arcane spellcasters. I have no idea how divine spellcasters work in DCC. Years later, I couldn't. Yeah, I couldn't.
Yeah, I can't come up with it right this second. I'd have to flip to the page.
Yeah, but I ran DCC. I ran funnels. I ran it first. I ran a couple of the regular adventures. And what my group came down to was they loved the adventures. They loved the wacky gonzo atmosphere of the adventures. That worked out fine. They didn't like the system. And they didn't like the system. It was mostly the spellcasters that didn't like it. Because if you're coming from 3X or 2E or 1E, you know what your fireball spell is going to do.
Yeah.
And the damage might swing a bit, but you know the basic effects of your fireball.
You're not going to have your hand shrivel into a crab claw suddenly.
Right. Or you don't, or your spell is not going to be suddenly like, it's going supernova and be a small nuclear explosion at the location. You know the parameters, but DCC you didn't know the parameters, and that frustrated my spell.
I think it's definitely it's not my my everyday. I think it's like it's a special spice, and I think the swinginess and the wacky zaniness is potentially part of the appeal. But I think it sort of struggles a little bit if you're looking for a more consistent thing, like I am sometimes.
Yeah, I think it's a game that I've played it at conventions. I played with Dougkovacs running games multiple times, and the great thing about Doug is that he's always been playtesting rules for Goodman games. But then you find out afterwards, he was playtesting like new setting rules, but not using any of the material he was presented with. So he was winging it as a playtest. Oh yeah, Doug is amazing like that. And he's a great artist.
Definitely. He's got some great stuff. I found the funnels were a lot of fun for throwing like people who've never played anything like sort of old school adjacent, and just sort of really for ripping the Band-Aid off on like that lethality idea. I think in a way that's goofy and fun and light and doesn't feel like heavy what's those Jack Chick tracks, like Elf Star is dead. Now get out. You're dead to me. I can't talk to you. Dead. I feel like that's sort of the vibe some people have on like lethality or like hard stuff in games. And I think if it's treated as a fun thing and you go in with that expectation that it's a risk, it could happen, but it's like Mario, you die a lot too.
Oh yeah, and that is part of the charm of it. And that's part of the idea with old school gaming, especially the easier rule sets or the more concise rule sets, Swords of Wizardry Light, which I run at conventions. You hand out the rules and you tell the table, in 15 minutes we'll be playing, generate your characters, and because to me, and this is what DCC does great. You're running 4 characters, but really what you're doing is you're getting attached to a character that you're going to use later. It's a survivor. So therefore, even if they have crappy stats, they're your crappy stats. Your crappy stats. Yeah. It's a survivor. At a convention, I always have felt, and I even ran some great games, but to pre-generate a character, you're going to use once and then never use it again. Yeah. So the idea with something like Swords of Wizardry Light is hey, if you survive, bring your character back to another convention where I'm running it. Survive twice, you level up. But if you don't survive, character generation is 10 minutes, if that. It's quicker the more, So but at least it's your character. Even if you created it, those are your stats. That's you named them, you define them through the play of this one session. So definitely. I think that's important. But all right, so now we've gotten you to OSR games, but now Mothership. How did we get to Mothership?
So from there so Stars Without Number was sort of my default thing, but I was looking for some great resources for science fiction games, right? Because sometimes you get lazy and you don't want to generate the entire sandbox yourself. Sometimes you want to stand on the shoulders of giants and have something great to just draw from. And Mothership, I've found their adventures they had, the Dead Planet, Pound of Flesh, now Gradient Descent, their sci-fi mega dungeon, were just such sort of high quality products that had some thought put into sort of information design, and then in a sort of compact package. And I ran Dead Planet using Stars Without Number, which was great, going from a sort of Firefly type thing and then springing like this horror stuff on the players. It was a real fun tonal shift. And I think sci-fi, really almost all sci-fi is just one step removed from jumping into sci-fi horror. Like I think it's not hard to jump into at all, and it was a lot of fun. And then from there, I found
Aliens. That is like the go-to science fiction was the whole the Aliens trilogy.
Yep.
Really.
Where do you stand on Aliens 3? Just curious. What's your take on it?
Yeah, I would say Alien and Aliens are like right there, number one, number two. Depending on my day,
hard to pick which one.
Depending on which day, either one I could say is the better movie, but they're both effing awesome. Aliens 3, tell you the truth, and I. As opposed to Alien and Aliens, which I've seen multiple times.
I mean, look, you're not gonna like Aliens 3 compared to Alien and Alien. No, I'm there,
and that's the whole thing too. I'm going to myself. I'm trying to remember the plot for Aliens. Oh, now I remember the plot.
For Space Prison license.
Yes, I just had to. I really had to like jumpstart my brain. And it was
my take on it is that if you didn't know anything about the previous movies and it just was dropped as its own thing, like in an alternate reality, it would be like a decent sci-fi horror movie if you didn't know how good the ones before it were.
It could be a solid B.
Like I'd watch it, and now it's just knowing how good it could be that makes it harder. And then of course you've got Resurrection, where the only good thing from that, in my opinion, is the facility is sort of cool, and it inspired this really dope Mothership Die Hard Alien Resurrection module that's on Kickstarter right now that someone's doing.
Oh, well, see, now that makes it worthwhile.
Yeah, see, that's the main good part.
And I hate to say it, that's like they start out great and they milk it. Same thing with like Terminator. The first two Terminator movies were much better than they ever should have been.
I still haven't gotten around to seeing either of the original twos. I just have a sort of internet reference level of understanding of them, and so I've got to. They're up there with Aliens. And
they are good. They're better than. They hold up better than, say, like the original Predator movie. But even that had something special about it, and you could see that the first movie was definitely better than the one that followed up on it. But a lot of times you take the originals and you milk them until you can't milk anything else out of it, and then they'll step away for 5 to 10 years and they reboot it.
Yeah,
we're going to come back with a new.
Let people not be tired about it anymore.
Yeah, and it's like how can you not get that? You can only get that feel once per. I mean, even Lord of the Rings, The Hobbit was because again, you were milking it, and people's expectations were already set high. Now, The Hobbit came out first, and that's what you knew about the IP, and then you had the Lord of the Rings. Then The Hobbit would have been seen in a better light, but The Hobbit followed. and you're kind of like,
I recently, just last night, not to get too deep, I guess it doesn't matter. We can go on whichever tangents, but the Hobbit, I saw somebody cut together, and there's been several versions. They cut together one film about 3 hours and 45 minutes from the 3, and it looks pretty good. It is basically the plot of the Hobbit, so it cuts out a lot of the extraneous, filler stuff. And because within those movies, when I saw it, there's a number of scenes that really stood out, and real excellent performances and stuff mixed in with a bunch of, video game garbage.
Yeah. Oh, let's jump the barrels. It's like, oh, geez, no, please don't do that. You're hurting me. Oh my God. Actually, the best version of The Hobbit is a British audio play, which I had a cassette tape, but my cassette tapes all kind of rotted out. I gotta try to find it on the internet. That was the best. Because I have the original. Was it Bass and Rankin? Cartoon version of The Hobbit. And that's not bad. But in some ways, everything. Yeah, in some ways it's better than the recent movies. But if you want Lord of the Rings, you'll take what they give you, and you'll have to like it, I guess.
Yeah,
maybe. But now
I aspire to. Oh, go for it. Yeah, have something that's big enough where, that's nice if you made it big enough that you can just sort of slop anything onto a plate and be like, sorry, that's you. It's it. That's the content. You got to enjoy it.
Yeah, you'll find something on this plate that you like. You might have to pick your way through it, but dig it out and you'll find it. Now, all right. So now, what got you? Because now we've gotten to Mothership.
Sure.
And it's weird because I've heard so much about Mothership, and honestly, probably my son calling you because he already tried to call me.
Nope.
But I've heard a lot about Mothership over the years and never actually looked at it. I was like, it wasn't something that usually came up in my gaming groups.
Yeah.
So now, looking at your Kickstarter, looking at what you were doing, and then going, oh, there's a link to Mothership. Let me look at it. I go, oh, it's percentile based. All right, cool. I go, and then seeing what it pulls upon for resources, seeing that it is available what you want, pay what you want on Drive-Thru RPG, folks, which is great pricing. But I was like, you know what? We're still in the midst of the world of the pandemic. It's not like I'm going outside and going to the movies. So I ordered myself a paper, a physical copy, because as much as I love PDF copies for use on my iPad, there is still something that's about a tangible book that is something that you kind of go, I really want.
Definitely.
So now, I'm not gonna put that into my ZineQuest expense report of blowing my budget already.
There's already,
this is the side budget of cool
system research.
Who knows what I might be running. But
what was your take on the system, and then I could sort of share my experience with it.
Listen, I looked at the PDF for all of 2 minutes and went, I can already tell it's that the writing's gonna be atmospheric. I'm gonna wait till I get my Dead Tree copy.
Oh, there you go.
So
it's coming in the mail.
It's coming in the mail. So I didn't look at it much beyond.
Gotcha.
It looks like this, just how sometimes you can tell with how rules are written.
Yeah.
What the feel is going to be.
Yeah, you can know if it's going to be like 400 pages of tables and references and
right, which is good for some things.
It could be for sure. I own DCC.
Right, but even with DCC, you read it and you go, all right, this 3/4 of this book is, but the atmosphere, you can catch the atmosphere, and I caught the atmosphere real quick with Mothership, which sold me on it. I was like, all right, I need to snuggle up on my recliner with the Dead Tree book in my hand. Is that what reached out to you? Was the atmosphere, or was it the system, or was it both?
Yeah, I think it was originally. I'd heard good things about the adventure, and I'd seen it was maybe this was last year. I'd heard about it because it was getting a little hype, winning some awards for design and stuff, and a couple stores were carrying it. And I missed the opportunity to play in a one-shot, and this was right before Corona started. So I was sort of kicking myself because that would have been, and it was in the town of Corona in California.
Go figure.
Funny. Yeah, I just drove down for a DCC event type thing, and they were going to do a little Mothership thing, but I just missed it. But I think what appealed to me originally was I'd heard great things about the adventures, right? And so, and for me, it's always a little bit of resistance when you're starting a new system. So I was seeing what they were doing, and at that point, I wasn't super familiar with percentile. Later on, I'd play some like Delta Green type Call of Cthulhu stuff, and it clicked a little bit more. But
okay, fun setting.
Yeah, so that was sort of helped me get the sort of percentile as like a pretty simple sort of base system. But it was the evocative adventures that were told in a way that was not, reading a story for the GM to then break apart into playable content. It's very laid out in, 52 pages or less, and every spread, tells you in an evocative way what's going on in sort of bullet points and such. And like in, for example, Dead Planet, which was the one I ran in Stars Without Number before I got into Mothership more. It's got 52 pages on it, and with those 52 pages, not to deeply spoil the module, but it's got a planet, it's got a spooky ship, it's got a moon with weird stuff on it, it's got a field of derelicts that you can randomly generate, and the amount of content. I mean, you could spend, I don't know, 5 sessions, 6 sessions, 7 sessions, more maybe. It's probably pushing it near then within this, little zine, right? And that sort of was a real sort of design with, like, it just sort of blew my mind that you could have this type of quality content in such a small package that was easy to access. And then I looked into some other Mothership stuff, and eventually I got into the system a bit more. Originally, I was going to make Desert Moon of Karth for like a Stars Without Number system neutral, but it turns out that Stars Without Number, there's not much. It's not niche that a lot of people play the game, but for people who specifically want content specifically for Stars Without Number, that's pretty niche.
Kevin.
Yeah, like it's exactly like there's not a thriving third-party thing, but the thing with Mothership is it's such a sort of real fertile, like a design field for third party. It's got a lot of support for that. There's people making tons of stuff, and the community around it is really into zines. So that's sort of what made my decision, and it sort of was a useful decision because it helped me sort of focus in a little bit on going for a bit more of that horror angle, while sort of maintaining that sort of sandbox Western adventure vibe I was going for from the start.
I think the Western theme fits sci-fi very well.
Oh yeah,
because and not just because of Firefly, but it's that whole the idea of these new frontiers and the unexplored worlds, and that was the Old West, and a lot of that was where our Americana comes from. That the Old West is kind of like the American folk tales, as what Europe had for the Middle Ages, and they have their stories about, King Arthur and the knights and trolls and giants. That we have the American West, and that is our the stories we hear are often fictionalized accounts of reality, and I think that it's something that converts well to science fiction.
I think the mythical nature, like the fact that, we're thinking spaghetti westerns, filmed in Spain and stuff. And we're thinking, and there's all these sort of Western sort of tropes and such that are not based in reality, right? They're not historical films. They're not necessarily, documentary. They're mythical sort of trope heavy films that are some often sort of, based. You've got other genres like, let's see, like the whole, what am I thinking of? 1 second. The sort of the cowboys defend the village, right? Like Seven Samurai style, like that. That's a classic type thing. Or in The Mandalorian, they did that too. And it's sort of like you mentioned. it's like larger than, and it's the sort of tropes and stuff. They sort of can transcend the sort of setting, like the sort of historical American one, and you can, like you said, put them in space and they work great. And then you throw in a cowboy hat, and some stuff for just some of the vibe.
It feels comfortable, whether it's the reader or your players, your audience. They feel comfortable because sure it's science fiction, it's in outer space, but we know these Western tropes. We know the man with no name, from Clint Eastwood. We've watched The Magnificent Seven. We've seen this. So and it transfers better to science fiction than it does fantasy, because fantasy comes with its own tropes, whereas science fiction tropes are kind of like
it can be anything, and you can make it science fiction. Definitely,
I think it's very very interesting.
I also like when you do something in a science fiction format as sort of I think frees you of some of the constraints or baggage that you might have in like if you're doing a more like historical type thing. And like there's like some tropes in westerns that obviously you wouldn't want to do in a thing like the savage natives are attacking our settlers, right? These sort of real antiquated takes that haven't aged well as history's gone on. And I think but I think sort of being able to pick and choose what you like of the genre and what you can take out and sort of reformat in a different sort of venue or like a sort of setting, I think really is useful, because science fiction is about imagination, right? You can imagine things entirely different and take the bits that you want and say, what if this was like that? And also have like a goofy time while doing it and as well. And it's been fun.
Yeah, I think science fiction does lend itself to that a lot more than fantasy, at least when it comes to RPGs and stuff. You can take science fiction in all these different directions, whether it's like the Star Trek, which is almost hard science. Then you get the Star Wars, which is very soft science, almost fantastical, magical in how it's approaching it. Firefly has their approach. The Expanse goes in different. And I think there's
definitely.
I think that science fiction is seeing a reemergence as people, even gamers, are seeing the viability of it. Sadly, it wasn't so much great for Starfinder from Pathfinder. It didn't quite reach the numbers that they were expecting it to hit. But I think that was again trying along those Star Wars lines of do we commit to the science fiction part? Or do we just make it fantasy and file off some of the serial numbers and see what we get?
I know when I was looking for a science fiction game, the only thing I'd known about it originally was, Starfinder's big and it's coming out. And it definitely wouldn't have been the thing for me in the long term, just due to the amount of crunch involved. And the science, actually, the setting's sort of cool. I like that science fantasy is out there for sure. It's its own thing. But it didn't... wouldn't have fit my needs for a more sort of light, sort of consequences heavy, sort of like old school style science fiction that you get with Mothership and Stars Without Number. And Mothership, I think, sort of jumping into that, is it's very sort of razor focused on the sci-fi sort of horror experience, and you can sort of build. And part of my challenge, I think, was the game. I'm the zine Desert Moon of Karth, right? It's not strictly a horror zine. There's horror elements in it, right? But it's also a sandbox adventure. There's danger, and there's some of that Western sort of faction dynamics going on with it.
Right.
And I think it's an interesting design space to be in. And I think Mothership definitely could have some more adventures in the future from other creators. Because if everything's constant, like Alien all the time, right? Then, your space truckers, they're not going to be surprised when the next derelict they come to, they're like, oh, let's see, is it going to be a deadly fungal disease? Is it going to be space zombies? We know it's something, right? So if it's something that is a little, just dropping the pedal off of the accelerator a little bit, I think that's really useful for building a campaign with long-term sort of play in a sort of harsh sci-fi universe.
So now since we've been talking about that, and it sounds like a really great zine, But how many play sessions do you think the average group is going to get out of it?
Sure, I think it's really hard to sort of guess because it's definitely something. But I can give some assessments, right? So there's about like 10 very detailed locations in it, sort of similar to Pound of Flesh, right? Each one will have about a spread, and there's various factions associated with some of the locations who interact. You've got the sort of Boomtown and a lot of people in there of Larstown at the base of the space elevator, and there's also, I think with the moving parts, there's a number of interesting dungeons that they can interact with or not as they go.
Right.
I think you could hypothetically have a whole campaign set only on Karth if you wanted to. The whole place, it's a tiny moon. It's only 167 miles in circumference there, but I think it could be a really interesting and sort of tight sandbox where everything's sort of interacting. You'd probably be sick of it by the end of the campaign, but you could squeeze a lot of mileage out of it, I think.
Well, see, because that was the feeling I was getting between what I read on the Kickstarter and talking to you now. I was like, wow, this sounds like you're going to get a lot of value out of this because it seems to be a sandbox with a lot of nice inspirational pieces to it. So
it's more a series of it's a situation and a series of situations for folks to interact with. Like big inspirations were Pound of Flesh, which is a mothership sort of a space station that's a fleshed out enormous space station with things going on in the background. It's very good. I'd recommend it as well. But also Hot Springs Island, which was this big hex crawl, was a big inspiration. And Ultraviolet Grasslands to an extent too for the point crawl mechanics and the weirdness.
Now, before we wrap up, I'm going to ask you a question because I've been dealing with a lot of obviously Kickstarter creators, and this is your first Kickstarter. What do you think? What's been your biggest challenge so far with the process doing with this Kickstarter? What's been your biggest challenge?
I think the biggest challenge has been when I was creating the thing, trying to figure out a framework for what it is that I was trying to do. Like originally, I was thinking, okay, I'll make like a 300-page book. It'll be a hex crawl. It'll be, hardcover. It'll be easy. And it turns out that's not easy. It turns out that's a lot of writing. Those are very expensive, and that would have been a whole thing. So I kept on paring things down and just doing research to figure out exactly sort of how I was like the form this thing was going to take. And as the form has taken more and more shape, it's got easier and easier. As I learned about sort of the format of ZineQuest, the Kickstarters got easier, and the content in the zine itself, Desert Moon of Karth, has also got easier. As now that I have the structure, when I was filling it out, it was easy. It's just sort of placing the requisite sort of interesting characters, situations, strange treasures, and stuff within that skeleton. And definitely, once that was there, it was easy, or easier.
Easier, right?
Yeah.
Kickstarters are never necessarily easy, but I'm glad that this one seems to have a few hiccups, and I'm glad to see that it's been a good experience for you. For most people I've talked to, it's been a good experience, and I think that with new creators, having the limitations that ZineQuest puts on you is good because it kind of means you again we kind of discussed you can't go off the rails. You can't. You got to stay within the parameters. It means you can't get too crazy with what you're doing, which is probably good. You can get crazy once you have one or two projects behind you. Then you know what the process is, and you can go off on it a bit. Well, damn, folks, definitely. Desert Moon of Karth. I believe that I am backing. Trying to find the damn tab on the right hand side.
Probably got a million open.
As I do the interviews, I go, all right, I guess I gotta close this tab. So you can back for a print on demand, for PDF print on demand, which you will then pay the cost price plus shipping, or you can get the Fancy Zine and PDF copy. And Fancy Zine is Mixam. Folks, if you don't know the printer Mixam, if you've gotten anything from Phil Reed, I think Phil Reed's been their best referral in the last 18 months.
And all the Mothership first party stuff. I think that's their default printer that they use. And
so if you're in the United States, it's going to come out to be like $19 shipped, and I mean that is damn awesome. So, and how much time do you have left in your project? Actually,
a bit actually.
You got 9 days left.
Yeah,
so folks, don't wait.
It's going pretty well.
Don't wait 9 days. It's doing well. Wow, you've got almost 850 backers.
Yeah, they're coming out of somewhere, but I guess I'm doing something right, or just getting real lucky with them.
No, I think it's going to be a real good project. I expect to see more from you. All right, here's my last question, and you can answer it or not as you see fit.
Okay.
What's the next project in the works here?
Yeah, I can sort of discuss that a bit, I guess.
All right.
So, assuming that this goes well, right, that there isn't something I haven't accommodated for that will like wipe out all the money from it and just be a whole headache. So, assuming that doesn't happen, right, then I'd love to do a sort of spiritual follow-up, a similar sort of region sandbox called, I don't know, like Tide World of Mani, sort of inspired by like Kevin Costner's Waterworld as like a sort of touchdown, I think. Because what's more different than going from a desert type spot to more of a ocean place with weird sort of post-apocalyptic stuff going on, maybe sea bases. That's sort of where I'm going for. I think that would be cool and definitely interesting in a different way.
Very nice. I like it. Well, again, you're the reason why I picked up Mothership. Obviously, I'm back in the Desert Moon of Karth. And now after talking with you and with one or two others, I'm really tempted to go back to my my bookshelves and dig out all my stuff from Kevin Crawford. I've backed, I think, every Kickstarter he's done.
It's all good stuff.
It's all good stuff. I need to go back and start rereading that stuff for inspiration, especially his tables. Folks,
definitely.
ZineQuest. Did I get it right? Now I just corrected myself to get it wrong. Yes.
I don't know what the right way is. I've been saying ZineQuest.
You're probably right. It should be ZineQuest unless you've never seen a magazine, in which case it would be Zine.
Oh, a magazine.
Yeah, see, it's magazine because it's a zine. Yeah. It's zine because it's a magazine. But if you didn't, magazines didn't exist, it would be a Zine.
Yeah.
Right? That word all right.
Yeah.
In any case,
potato.
ZineQuest goes on for the rest of the month, folks. We're in December. Sorry, we're in February. December. I'm really losing my mind now. Folks, there's been a series of fireside chats here. Some great creators, some great projects to back. Please do so. For those that are listening live, I'm going to be back at about 9 o'clock with my wife and my lovely niece, Shannon. And we're going to be talking a little bit about how going to school via distance and in person differs. So it's not just your physical health, but it's emotional and mental health issues that we'd like to touch upon, especially in this world of COVID. And on that note, folks, be safe, be well, God bless. Roll those dice, roll them well, and I'll be back with you all later. Again, Joel, thank you so much.
Yeah, no worries. It's been a good time.